This is lecture number DR046AA02. It is the 46th lecture of the Mega Genius Lectures and the second lecture of the Advanced Abilities series. It was recorded on August 31st, 2016. The title of this lecture is Master Keys to Abilities. It is 21 minutes long, copyright 2016 by Mega Genius Incorporated, all rights reserved. This lecture is protected by internationally valid copyright. It may not in whole or in part be duplicated, transmitted, or otherwise reproduced without the express permission of Mega Genius Incorporated. Unauthorized translation, importation, or distribution is a violation of applicable laws. Mega Genius is a United States federally registered trademark and service mark. And now, here is Mega Genius.
Now I'll give you another example of the Genius formula and the acts of expanding attention and examining details, and in particular this time, the act of omission by not assuming. Earlier this year, while traveling from Washington, D.C. to Newark, New Jersey, I landed at Pittsburgh International Airport to conduct personal consultations in Pennsylvania and Ohio. 2 days later, on the morning of May the 8th, 2016, I returned to the International Airport in Pittsburgh, the second largest airport in the state of Pennsylvania, processing more than 8 million travelers annually, to continue with my itinerary to Newark. I have a global entry pass, which allows me to pass quickly through designated immigration entry points when I'm traveling internationally, alongside pilots, sky marshals, and other airline officials, and through similar discrete Transportation Security Administration or TSA checkpoints throughout the United States. Consequently, I customarily avoid the normal airport lines and pass through a different security egress in about 10 seconds. Not on that morning, though, at Pittsburgh International Airport, when I inquired as to why my boarding pass had not been coded to permit me to bypass the normal security lines and walk through the discrete pre-TSA checkpoint that bypassed the normal long lines. I was told that the airport had some issues at that moment, that no such checkpoint at that airport was operational at that time, and that on that day I would have to use the normal security line. That meant a long wait, removing my Kalahari safari jacket, boots, belt, and jewelry, emptying all pockets, displaying all small bottles of liquids, etc., none of which was part of my agenda. I had a flight to catch soon. Yet the worst was still to come. After I had left the United Airlines counter and was approaching the TSA checkpoint, which was then about 300 feet ahead of me, I encountered a massive crowd of passengers backed up to be processed through security, which I estimated to number more than 2,000. As I watched for a moment, the serpentine line of clearly distressed passengers appeared motionless. Obviously, the discrete pre-TSA checkpoint for those with security clearances wasn't the only non-functional operation at that major airport on that day. This was not a minor discordance, but a 200-piece off-key orchestra. Why would Pittsburgh International Airport's TSA lines be backed up for perhaps 2 hours during a non-holiday flight schedule? Just then another passenger walked up alongside of me, looked around for the normal TSA processing line, saw the massive glut of other passengers corralled ahead of us, and appeared to have a light stroke as he realized that he had no choice but to join the horde. But I knew a better choice than that. Whatever the best solution was, I could easily determine it by applying the Genius formula. I stood for a moment in the middle of the terminal looking all around, expanding my attention, which was part of perceiving the whole situation. At first I saw nothing out of the ordinary, but then noticed that above the entrance to a corridor that led in a direction opposite to the TSA multitude of passengers was a sign, which I had to look almost straight above me to see, that read, quote, "Alternate Security," unquote. What, I wondered, was that? Except for those two words, everything associated with the corridor looked as if there was no legitimate reason to walk down it. It looked as if it led straight out of the airport terminal. Well, it takes faith in the genius formula to carry your luggage away from where a multitude of anxious passengers are going and to continue walking in the opposite direction of your gate, 100 feet down a corridor, through large double-glass doors and completely outside of the building, across a sidewalk, in the sunlight outdoors and across a street that is bustling with taxis and other vehicles, across another sidewalk, then through another set of unmarked double-glass doors, and into another unmarked building, down another 100-foot corridor, and after a left turn 200 feet down another corridor, all with no other signage or anything else to validate your efforts. You just have your confidence in the workability of the genius formula. Well, finally I arrived at a single desk set up in the long hallway, behind which sat a man who nodded. He reached for the boarding pass in my hand and said, "Let me see your ID." I then showed him my passport, which he returned along with my boarding pass, and another nod, and flicked his thumb toward another unmarked open door. As I wondered where it would lead, I suddenly remembered from a few years ago a widely reported news item about a 21-year-old Sacramento community college student, Michael Lewis, who had taken off on what he had thought was a 1-hour flight from Los Angeles International Airport to Oakland, California, only to hear the pilot announce as the aircraft rose above the 12,000-foot-high clouds, quote, "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome aboard Air New Zealand. Our flight time today to Auckland will be 13 hours and 31 minutes, unquote. Instead of heading to Oakland, California, he realized that he was somehow flying to Auckland, New Zealand, 6,600 miles in the wrong direction, on the wrong airline, without even a passport, at which point he bolted from his seat, probably feeling as if he were suffering a light stroke too. Well, he ended up in Auckland, New Zealand, stayed there for 1 day, as I recall, and the airline flew him back to California, whereupon Air New Zealand explained that their employees had asked Mr. Lewis 3 times if he was going to Auckland, and 3 times he had said yes. Mr. Lewis had a different story, explaining, quote, "They didn't say Auckland, they said Oakland. They talk different," unquote. Well, regardless, as I was being directed through another unmarked open door, I thought, I need to make sure that I end up in the state of New Jersey and not on the island of Jersey off the coast of Normandy, France. So I checked my boarding pass again. As I suddenly stepped through the doorway into an immense room, however, I saw everything that I could have hoped for. Too much, actually. 8 different security conveyor belts, all running, each station with both its own walk-through metal detector and its own operating TSA agent. This was a fully operational TSA checkpoint, obviously capable of quickly processing hundreds of travelers, but with only a single passenger anywhere in the entire 10,000 square foot room, me. All 8 of the TSA agents seemed joyful to see me enter. As instructed, I placed my single item of luggage on the belt, removed only my boots, and walked through the metal detector, all in about 10 seconds. I was done, almost as fast as passing through a discreet pre-TSA checkpoint. "Where is everyone?" I asked my TSA agent. "I don't know," he replied. "I guess nobody's told anybody we're here." Then I exited the room and entered a corridor that led me straight to my departure gate, where I relaxed and thanked the Genius Formula for rescuing me from a TSA nightmare. This, then, is our third example in this lecture series of using the Genius Formula. Again, we used all three steps of the formula, but with emphasis this time on avoiding the assumption that some 2,000 other passengers could not all be wrong, and we thereby thought more intelligently and discovered how to avoid about 2 hours worth of time standing in a badly backed up line with all the associated hassle to get through TSA security that day at Pittsburgh International Airport. The quick, easy, effective solution that the Genius Formula provided would have made anyone's day. I'm just emphasizing that the Genius Formula works if you use it, and that it is applicable to life and can make life easier, and that all three parts of the formula work together: expanding your sphere of attention, examining things more closely, and avoiding making assumptions, although any one of the parts will often play a more important role than the other two. I'm also pointing out the value of noticing things that are slightly out of tune as you expand your attention, and of examining those discords that appear unimportant, and of not assuming that minor notes of disharmony are not worth your time, unless you have, for example, 2 hours of extra time to pass standing unnecessarily in a backed-up TSA line waiting for a plane that won't. Another thing that I'm doing in this lecture is responding to those of you who feel that you could use a hand in applying the Genius Formula. I've just given you in the last lecture and in this one several real-life examples of how I use it in my own life, and it works so well that I would almost be embarrassed to reveal how simply, smoothly, and joyfully my life goes because I use it innately. And still another thing that I want to re-emphasize in this lecture is the value of looking. Just looking accurately, far and wide, without assuming. I addressed this in the last lecture series, Level 4, the Lost Wisdom series, but let's do it again in a single sentence, because people sometimes forget. If and when a person has any trouble applying the Genius Formula, it is because he or she is doing too much thinking and not enough looking. Clearing up the false attribution of the alleged Einstein quotation took almost no thought, just a little research, a little looking into his verifiable quotations. Solving Jack the Ripper took no appreciable mental work. It really didn't. It just took a closer than usual examination of what was known about the case without disregarding a few small red flags that seemed incongruous, which then caused a major assumption that had been made by every former Ripper investigator to explode into view. It did not take a great mind. It only took the unwillingness to ignore minute incongruent matters, by which I mean illogical occurrences, such as why a man wearing obviously expensive jewelry would, in the depth of the dark night, walk down what the Daily Mail once referred to as, quote, the worst street in London, a street so dangerous that police would only walk down it in the daytime and then only in pairs, unquote. Finding a way to get through backed-up TSA security quickly required only the slightest thought, just the willingness to avoid a major assumption made without any thought by thousands of others. After all, the sign that nobody else paid any attention to did read alternate security, but everyone else just followed the crowd. An immeasurably high level of intelligence is not due to an inordinately pronounced ability to think, as much as it is the result of a refined ability to perceive. Intense thinking will actually bog down a person into a state of seriousness and inaction. To see what I mean, just look at Rodin's sculpture of The Thinker, a man in deep thought and going nowhere. Now, let's return to Einstein. What also caught my attention the first time that I heard the quotation defining insanity, which I was confident that Einstein had not said, was that if Einstein had said that, he would have been wrong, because insanity is not doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Instead, insanity is the inability to accept responsibility for oneself, for one's family and friends, and for one's environment. When a person is able and willing to admit that he or she is responsible for his own condition, his own health, his own happiness, and is responsible for his own mistakes and accomplishments, he is well on his way to a successful life. But when a person's abilities decrease to the point that he claims that others and bad luck and fate are responsible for his conditions and complains that life is just not fair, he is not thinking sensibly and with good judgment. And when a person's abilities decrease to the point that he is unable and unwilling to accept any meaningful responsibility for his actions or lack of actions, well, he is finally admitted to a mental institution. And when a person's abilities decrease to the point that he is also unable and unwilling to accept any responsibility for the lives of others, society forcibly confines him to Atascadero State Hospital's maximum security psychiatric facilities for the criminally insane. Insanity is a gradient condition of uncertainty and, consequently, lack of responsibility. That is what an insane person is, certifiably irresponsible for his actions. So again, insanity is the inability to accept responsibility. And that direct relationship between ability and sanity is the best reason why it would be extremely advantageous for you to learn to meaningfully increase your abilities. Now, where does that leave us? Well, it leaves us with the anonymous and false statement mistakenly attributed to Einstein that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Actually doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results is an example of stupidity, which is another inability, the inability to learn. Now, speaking of abilities, I don't know about you, but I don't know everything, and I don't know how to do everything. Oh, I can recognize a Java plum tree when I see one. Java plums make excellent jam, by the way, and I can show you where to find 400-million-year-old branchiopod fossils. And let's see, I can straighten out anyone's life at their request. With their cooperation. I have those abilities down pat, but I don't know how to tune up an engine, or knit a sweater, or yodel. But I could learn if I wanted, and you could too. We can't conveniently learn everything, though, so we have to choose. And here we come to the point of the Mega Genius Lectures, Level 5, the Advanced Abilities Series. Just as real power resides in wisdom, not in mere libraries of miscellaneous knowledge, so do essential abilities reside in wisdom, meaning fundamental abilities that enable one to more easily achieve his objectives, recognize his responsibilities, and increase his understanding and enjoyment of life. By the way, did you ever hear of Richard Corey? You should have. I may even have mentioned this in a lecture one time. Richard Corey is a brief poem written by Edwin Arlington Robinson in the late 19th century. There is more to the poem than most people would feel comfortable admitting. Where is it here? Here is that poem entitled Richard Corey. Whenever Richard Cory went downtown, we people on the pavement looked at him. He was a gentleman from sole to crown, clean-favored and imperially slim, and he was always quietly arrayed, and he was always human when he talked, but still he fluttered pulses when he said good morning, and he glittered when he walked, and he was rich, yes, richer than a king, and admirably schooled in every grace. In fine, we thought that he was everything to make us wish that we were in his place. So on we worked, and waited for the light, and went without the meat, and cursed the bread. And Richard Cory, one calm summer night, went home and put a bullet through his head. I knew a Richard Cory myself a few years ago. Her name was Thelma, a young woman with whom I had been friends for a couple of decades. She had impressive abilities as a writer, an artist, a student of Shakespeare, a practitioner of medicine, and she possessed an unusual degree of common sense. She had many other pronounced talents as well, and was highly respected by many people. She was attractive, educated, and more importantly, she had the ability to invariably leave those with whom she came into contact feeling happier. Whenever she walked through doorways, rooms brightened. Then one calm summer day, at the age of 38 years old, she came home and very considerately wrote a note to the county coroner. Quote, "I have taken 35 pentabarbs and 6 phenobarbs," unquote, and that was the end of Thelma. In many ways, she had the world at her doorstep, but not the key to her future. Just like Richard Cory, she lacked the often overlooked ability to consistently be the master of her own considerations. Some abilities that are easily learned are master keys to attaining one's objectives, whatever they may be, and I'll be going over many of them with you in these lectures. Some lectures will include my referencing sections of material that I published long ago in some Megagenius intelligence briefings, which have been unavailable to the public for years. That material will be updated. Other material will consist of answers that I've given to clients through the Ask Megagenius option. And many other thoughts will be ones that I've never shared with anyone before. But I believe that all of these spoken words will be worth both my time and yours. They constitute wisdom. I'm not going to teach you in this lecture series how to dive 2.5 revolutions in the pike position, or fix an air compressor, or milk a yak, which I don't know how to do myself, but I will explain some of those master key abilities, including how to intelligently decide where you should be going, and how to deal more effectively with your emotions, and how to enjoy mastering your problems, and how to easily tune up your life, and how to guarantee your own success, and how to win in the game of life, among other advanced abilities. If you learn the rules that I'm about to share with you and use them, they will unlock many doors, and you will be far less likely to find yourself standing in the shadows before a locked door, doing the same thing over and over again, and expecting different results. So let's continue increasing our abilities with master keys.